All right. All right. Happy January 6th, 2023. I think that's the first time I've said that. I know I haven't written it down properly anywhere, and I think Michelle was talking about that yesterday. She was working and said she hadn't, she might have been using the wrong date all along. Happens all the time, huh? Anyway, this day in history, I think it was, and I may have the first name wrong, Samuel Morse. I might be wrong about the first name. Anyway, this day, January 6th, this day in history was the first time a coded message was sent, Morse code, over what would soon to become phone lines. And that's a big damn deal. That was the first time that data was sent long distances with electrical impulses. Pretty cool. So that is the important thing that happened on January 6th in the history. Probably one of the most important things ever. Not to be confused with Talking Points January 6th, which I'm sure we'll be hearing more about, except they have another distraction for us, don't they? The Democrat Party. Joe Biden's headed to the border, finally. You know what? I'm not going to say finally. It makes me sound like one of them obtuse Republicans. I'm a libertarian. In absence of the welfare state, I would want the border to be free and easy. But you can't have that given the current set of circumstances that our government has decided it's job to take care of everybody. But as a libertarian, I would want all people in a peaceful world to be able to perambulate about the planet freely. And by the way, the process should be easy. But again, when you have conditions of the welfare state, that skews the whole dynamic. Joe Biden hasn't had to go to the border because the border serves the purpose of his party. Chaos always serves, well, I say the tyrant, but if we want to keep things more right-sized, it always serves those who are trying to garner or increase power. And in the case of the Democrat Party, it is all about growing government and seizing more power over our individual lives. There isn't a Democrat on the planet that should be able to talk about individual rights because they don't, except whereas if they can find some disenfranchised party or create oppressed parties, or they'll talk to their rights, but they're not talking to individual rights. They're talking about how the chaos can be used, the discord can be used to garner more power for the merciless bureaucrats, as I call them. So anyway, Joe Biden's finally going down to the border, and he's going down there because it suits a need. The 2024 election's coming up. He'll be running. Why wouldn't he? As I mentioned on one of the social sites recently, he didn't have to lift a finger to get elected this last time. Most folks don't pay this much attention. So there's no reason in the world that he shouldn't run. And now he's headed down to the border. And this is typical finger in the air politics. You know, which way's the wind blowing? Well, you better now that we're past the midterms and we're headed into the next presidential election cycle, you better say something about the border. The omnibus budget that was recently passed, the feckless Republicans signed off on that. The increased border funding was all about processing human beings. Supposedly asylum seekers. They've been distracting us with Title 42 or whatever. I think it was Title 42. Is that what they're called? Relative to COVID as to a reason to hold people back. No, the reason you hold people back in a sorely troubled world is because it's called vetting for disease, for criminality, for, what are your intentions? Do you know anybody here? Got work lined up? There's lots of things we could be doing better. And the bottom line is that the omnibus bill, the only thing that they added funds for was processing. So their intentions are pretty clear. I do see here on a recent AP story that Biden will immediately be turning away Cubans, Haitians, and Nicaraguans, as well as Venezuelans. I bet, because those folks, they know what socialism looks like and what communism looks like, and they are often inclined to vote in a slightly different direction than most of those folks are a little more politically astute because they've lived under the hell of horrendous political oppression. So I bet he's not going to have them. He doesn't want them coming. So that doesn't surprise me in the least. But this is just part of a strategy. The Democrats know that border has served their purpose. They get to point at Republicans and call them bigots and racists. People believe that. I'm a bigot. And by the way, the word bigot just simply means I'm anchored to an idea that I refuse to let go of. I'm not going to look at it differently. I'm a sovereignty bigot. I believe on a sorely troubled planet. Mexico is a horrifically corrupt and it's just corrupt and nasty down there. Sorry, you get off the tourist path, it's a horrendous place to live. I understand why people are coming up who don't want to be there anymore. Our own corruptions notwithstanding. But anyway, this is a perfect strategy for them. The Democrats have allowed trafficking, and they've allowed the cartels to basically move their drugs across there, drugs that are often being manufactured with Chinese ingredients. There's dozens of countries. People are immigrating up through our southern border to get here, and they're not all asylum seekers. The Democrats have expanded that. I get that. Again, that serves their cause. To not just for the votes that they think they're going to get, but to expand the state. Hence, we go back to the last spending bill. The border funding was more about processing than enforcement. Enforcement, I don't even think was mentioned in it, and I could be wrong. But I scanned some of those things. And the reason Joe Biden didn't go down there previously is because he didn't have to. He didn't have to. Joe Biden hasn't had to do much of anything, has he? Except spend money that he doesn't have. Except to turn people against each other based on the color of their skin, their ethnicity, their gender, their sexual proclivities. So he hasn't had to do much of anything. He's some kind of media darling. It's amazing. Goes on talk shows, gets lobbed softballs. That's just the way it is. He hasn't had to go down there. And the only reason he's going down there now is because 2024 is coming, and all of a sudden they're going to act like, and they'll get away with it because of the complicit media machine full of left-wing journalists. And most lefties don't know they're lefties. They're statists, and they don't know it. They believe that something's got to be done about that, and you can just add anything that they consider an issue that will get people to tune in, and they presume it's the state's job to do it. So the border has served the Democrats beautifully for decades now. It fosters their narrative that anyone that's against people coming into the country are bigots and racists. That's not so. We're concerned about sovereignty and safety and security. The world's a troubled place. There's nothing wrong with any of those tenets. And I would love for our neighbors in the South to have better lives, but I'm thinking, man, maybe they should be more politically astute and start working that from their side of the border. That's, again, why the Venezuelans, the Nicaraguans, the Cubans in particular, and the Haitians they're pretty politically astute because they're further down. They're coming from more horrific places, so they've had to pay more attention to what's being done to them. Rather than just being in survival mode. So I bet old Biden don't want them here because they're going to look at a big government and statism and say, well, that didn't work too well where we came from. So I think that's all I've got today. I was kind of thinking about, let's see here. I think that's about it. I really do. We're going to talk more about the middle class and why statists abhor that. I'm actually taking an online class right now relative to the value of citizenship, what that means, and what the erosion of that means. Again, if the world were all peaceful and unicorns and rainbows, yes, we could all just cruise around and go do whatever we want and work wherever we want. I'm a libertarian. I would love that. But that isn't happening. That's not what's happening here. And so orderly, lawful immigration should be the goal of any sovereign nation. And people with jobs lined up, with people already here that they can identify, that they are related to, that are going to put them to work and start them down a structured citizenship process with a goal to actually learn the language so that they can communicate with us and we can build better relationships that way. I'll extend this a little further. After I left corporate America, I kind of moved back into the blue collar trades. And one of the saddest things is that the painters, the drywallers, the landscapers, I'm in there doing electrical work and I can't communicate with them. We can't joke. We can't get to know each other. We can't share anything. We can't talk about politics. Huh? And I found that to be sad because when I was a young man on these job sites, everybody was razzing each other, telling jokes, learning about each other, sharing things, talking about politics, talking about dating, talking about what their next bass boat they're going to buy or whatever, right? Where they play pool, where they drink. And there's a separation now. I noticed when I, again, got back into the trades here in the late 2000s. And that's sad. That shouldn't be. And it takes away from our culture. It doesn't contribute. And our culture is one of building relationships to have exchanges, voluntary exchanges with one another to profit. It's capitalism. It's a big part of our culture. Not just showing up somewhere to make money with a bunch of people that you don't know, which is fine. But I'd like it to be bigger and better and more beautiful than that. So anyway, I think that's all I got for today. Peace.